So for those of you who don't know, Jim Bondi is the director of the co-op office.
Associate director.
Associate director. I just promoted him.
Yeah. No thanks.
So he's going to give the presentation on the co-op. Next week, the next meeting we have will be only for international students, and we'll focus more on what you need to do with ISS and what additional paperwork you need as international students to go out on co-op. So I'm going to step aside and let Jim take over.
How you doing? We have a lot of material to cover, and I'm probably going to go really fast. This will be online. We have a My Courses piece that will add this to it, and then we can add your names to it so you can get in and see it. So if you want to see the PowerPoint, you'll be able to do it there. I'm not going to go over all the details about what our office does, but just a quick slide to show you that we do a lot of things. One big thing that's happening in 3 weeks is the career fair that some of you might want to attend. 90% of them are looking for computing something. So you're in the right place with the right major, so take advantage of it, and we'll talk about some of that in a little bit, but there's a lot of stuff going on through our office. You should know about it, and I'm really happy that you're all here because the master's students don't always hear about this stuff. They read it, they get a little piece, and then all of a sudden they're saying, I didn't hear about this. So I'm really glad you're here. But we do a lot of these things. That's our website if you haven't been there. How many people have been on Job Zone? Okay. That's where we put everything. So if you want to know which companies are coming to the career fair and all the activity about jobs, since this is a co-op orientation, that's where we put everything. So if you don't go there and look there, then you're missing a lot of positions that we post. And some of our employers get upset because they go, well, we posted it and we really didn't get anybody to apply to this. And so we're putting this out for students to apply. It doesn't do me any good. You know, we have employers we talk to, we try to make sure that they know about it. But until you look at it, sign up, and apply, it really doesn't help anybody. So here's all the pieces that you can look at. We got a lot of information. Co-op, just in general, terms is, we say full-time. So one of the requirements of your department says it has to be full-time, which is about 35 hours a week to 40. Paid experience related to your field. So it's not to do filing, it's not to do anything but something in IST, something in HCI, or whatever major you're in. I mean, you're here for a reason, and we're trying to help you get there. So if you take a co-op, you're trying to take a co-op that's going to get you a step further and closer to where you want to be. It might be with a company that you want to be with, but that's what we try to do to make sure when we talk to employers, and when you talk to employers, it's not just here's a list of jobs that I apply to, but if you find one, I mean, we don't have everybody, we don't own all these companies, would be nice, but we don't. So it's your opportunity to check other places, get it approved, we'll talk about that, because we don't do everything for everybody. We do a lot for a lot of students, but it's not everything for everybody. So it really comes down to you finding the co-op. Summer, 10 weeks, semesters 15, that's give or take a few because some of them are 12 weeks because you got breaks between each, and more than 15, depends on the company. Real quick, obviously paid. We're trying to help you with your future. So I'm going to quickly go over this, take a quick snapshot of it. You know, technical skills, everything I just said. So this is a required session by your department that we appreciate because it's good to make sure that everybody hears what we really hear from employers, what we say about co-op, and that's what we're trying to do. So you register on Job Zone, you tell us where you're working, we know now where you're at, and I'll get into more of that. This is optional, so you don't really have to take advantage of it. It's really optional to you, but a lot of master's students in CS and IT do take advantage of it, and it's just to get you out the door and practice what you already know. If you have a bunch of years of experience before that, you may or may not need to take advantage of it. This is Jill's slide, and the department slide. So there's a lot of requirements before you can go. So attending this is the one thing, so that's why they did want to require it. You have to have 12 credits at a 3.0. And some of that's just, if you're at a master's level, and you like this stuff, because this is not the first time you've been doing this, it's just saying to the employer, I really like this, I'm doing well, and I'm probably going to show a strength in this field through my whole career at RIT and out there on the job. So you're just really trying to prove to them that you know your stuff and you like to do it. I mean, when you try to explain it to the employer, say, you know, I really like to it, and you're below a 3, it starts becoming, well, how serious are you really about this? Because employers want you to be good at this. I mean, Microsoft says we want smart people. I don't really say that they have a 3.0. Hume, they want smart people. So they don't really designate a 3.0 as smart people. They just, I'm just saying that's what the department is putting out there, but you do really need to look at that. One little difference for yours is an offer letter. So if you go out and you find a company and you really are interested in working for them, we're asking the master's students to get an offer letter from that company. It really puts it in paper what you're going to be doing, when you're doing it. So start dates, full-time status, paid, what's the pay before you accept it. And some of that reasoning is, as you read down this, we've had people, and so people in front of you, people have graduated, have reneged on jobs, where that means I accepted it, either verbally or in writing, and then I didn't show up. And there's a lot of reasons for that to happen, but they're really not acceptable, because we have employers that count on you saying yes, and you're there. You know, they go through an interview process, and if you're number 1, they're saying you're going to come to our office. Okay, everybody else, we're done. Let's go find something else. So when it gets down to you reneging, it's bad for RIT, it's bad for you, and it's really bad for you when the department says, okay, you're going to lose your graduate scholarships. It's really bad for you that you're not going to get credit for co-op, and it's bad for you because you're going to get F on your transcript. So people go like, I don't want that F on my transcript. Just remember, we're not trying to make it hard. We want people to do this. We want people to succeed, but we also need some rules of the game. So this is kind of what we're putting out forth in front of you. Most of you understand all this, but we want to make sure you remember it, because you're signing these pieces of paper to say, you know, I understand it, I recognize it, and I'm willing to follow by those rules. Which when people say, well, it doesn't fit me, you know, I need to do this, it's higher pay. The quick answer to that is don't accept it until you consider it, sit on it, and if you think you're not going to get any other opportunities, you may say, I'm going to take that job, but then once you say yes, that's it. So don't renege. Anyway, we hate to be doing these kind of like high schoolish kinds of things, but it really happens regularly, so we want to make a point that you understand it. You register in Job Zone telling us where you're working. I'm going to get into all this. Yeah, I don't want to do that. So you can see the rest of it. I'm not going to go over the details, but when you sign off, make sure you read it. And so we're going to have an International Tuesday. Basically, we're going to review international resumes for our students, international students' resumes on Tuesday in our office. So we're all hands on deck from our office. So we want to make sure you come in, see us, show us your resume, and I call it the key to the office. Every employer wants it. We want to see that it's good, because some people have done less than acceptable resumes. They might be from their home country that may not fit the culture here. So it's just something that you want somebody to look at, see what you're doing. But the gist of a resume is you're trying to tell me what you've done that relates to that employer. So if you don't remember anything I tell you, it's basically you're matching your background to their needs. If you don't know anything about that company, it's really hard to know what their needs are. So you really need to make sure that you make that connection, because you're saying, well, I want to apply to this, and I've seen people just throw their resume at everything. It's not a good way to do it. I mean, you throw it, does it stick? You know, I had a networking person that was looking for, I had a development job, it was a networking resume, and they said networking systems. And I looked at it, I'm like, hand it to the coordinator that works for networking, he said, talk to this guy. I basically threw it out. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, you're not even looking at the job description, you're not even paying attention to what's going on, and employers do the same thing. Cover letters, I'm not going to go over that, but it's usually a statement about you, more personal, less. Resumes are pretty much an outline of things that you've done in a pretty concise way, and I'll show you that in a minute. The cover letter is typically more of you describing, through my experiences and my education, here's what I can do. And you're kind of highlighting your connection to that employer. What makes you a good match? So you kind of outline that. Then you're saying, I'm also trying to say, I want to set up an appointment with you for an interview because that's the next step. So I'll go over that in a little bit. And 60-second commercial will be what you'll be using at the career fair. I'm not going to go into this kind of detail, but if you want to know more about it, I usually say for master's students, you can go up to 2 pages. One is a typical page if you have enough experience. We don't necessarily have to have your, if you've written papers and published, we don't necessarily have to have it from the master's students for the co-op or for the career fair. So you don't really need to have 2 pages. If you start going out on the market and you've had some research that you've published, yes, put it on your resume, go to 2 pages, not a problem. So if you have enough work experience and education experience, go ahead and put it down. Use it too. But don't go over 2. I've seen 3, 4, 5 pages. And at the career fair, that's not really that helpful. They're not going to look at it at all. They'll probably take the first page. We have a lot of stuff online for resumes. We have samples online on resumes. So if you go to our website and pick job search, and it'll say resumes, and it'll say resume samples, you'll see things that might match your skills. We're just trying to highlight some of this. If you send me a resume, so for your IST masters and you want me to look at your resume, happy to do it. But if I look at it in Word and I see nothing spelled correctly, it means you didn't use spell check. I'm not even gonna look at it. I'm gonna send it back and say, you know, you gotta do 101 for me. You can't just throw this thing out and hope that I have time to look at this, because if you all send it to me right now, I don't have that kind of time to just spend it on each person's resume. So we look at it, but do the minimum. Make sure that you say, like, don't use I, because the whole resume is I. You can do in a cover letter, you can, but not in a resume. So there's just some quick things that you want. Some international resumes have had personal information, health. That's an old style that the U.S. used to use, but they really don't even want that on your resume anymore. So keep that in mind. Proofread. I'm going to go over this quickly. Your objective. I do like to see people with objectives on their resumes. It tells me what you want to do for that company. You may say, well, I'm not really sure because I could go to either 2 different directions. But for the most part, if you're talking to a specific company and you think that's one, have 2 resumes with 2 different objectives. Pull one off the bottom for the company that wants a particular area, and pull off the top for the one that's directly related to what you want to do. But it is important because it's the first line of a paragraph. If you look at it, the objective says, yes, I want to read more, and this is what I'm going to read about, or yeah, I'm not interested. Like I said, somebody had networking at the top of the resume. That was their objective. I needed a developer. Throw it out. So they didn't really know what I asked them for. They didn't even pay attention to it, or they didn't care. They just were throwing it out and just hope something happens. So really think about that. So the objective is your first line of what I'm going to read. It's kind of like you saying, I have a match. My skill to match what you want me to do for you. And so let's talk about this. So when I go to the interview, that's the first line I see. That's what I'm going to be expecting to do. So you're kind of gearing up the reader for what you want to do with them. And it's kind of gearing up the reader to say, yes, my skills do match. Education, that tells us just where you are, what's going on. And right now, it's your latest thing that you're doing. So I would assume that you'd put it at the top, not under work experience, unless you have an extensive work experience, which I've seen. I said, you should be teaching this class instead of taking it, because they had like 10 years in the telecom industry and they were taking a telecom course. And so if you have that kind of experience, switch it around. But I'm looking for a reason why you're here. When I look at the education, I'm saying, why are you taking these courses? Why do you need it? Do you think you need just a degree to do your work? A lot of you could probably go out and do it anyway without a degree. Not that RIT wants me to tell you that, but The idea is you have skill sets that got you here. You're trying to enhance those skills. How do you say it? Your education's what is kind of saying, here's how I'm enhancing my skills. My education is what I'm targeting, what I could do for those companies. So there's a good reason why you want to go into the education a little more detail. But just saying where you are, what your degree is one quick way to start. But relevant courses, yeah, if you all put down your courses and say, here, they relate. I don't know if you know everything in that class. I don't even know if you're comparable if you take the same class. I want to know what you did in that class. So if it's really obvious what the class is, fine. But some people do like computing 1 through 4, and you have no idea what that is. It's Hello World 1, Hello World 2, Hello World 3. You know, it doesn't really tell me anything about what you did and what you learned in that class. So employers are trying to say, well, I have this job, how do I match? If you're not telling me here and you're just saying, here's a couple classes I took that I think match, you're still not giving me enough to go on. Because I usually say, if I tell you I program a game in Java, what do you know about me? Anything? Anybody? I program a game in Java. What would you say about me? It's on my resume. Here's what I'm showing you. And this is, instead of putting a class down, this is what I did. Back to Hello World. It's a lousy game. It's 3 lines of code, you know, or less. You know, so the idea is I'm not really telling you anything. So you really want to dive deeper into not just the courses, or you use course, colon, and then tell me more about it. So where you can see where it says projects. That's kind of what I'm really saying is I need to know depth of knowledge. You're not taking 101 anymore. You're past that. You've taken that undergrad. You're now taking more advanced classes, and you're diving deeper into the topic, and you're getting, you know, enhancing your skills. I want to know what those skills are. Employers want to know what those skills are, and if you don't tell me those things, I really don't know what you're trying to say. I could just say everybody did Hello World at the advanced level, you know, until you get down into some nitty-gritty, into detail. And I don't mean a paragraph. Just get me something to read. If I said then multi-threading or some other little deeper dive into like Java, then you might say, okay, they know a little bit more. Or if I talk about data structures, if I'm talking about developer, if I talk about different setups for networks, things like that, it just depends on what you're really trying to tell me. But dive into it a little bit. So you can see the first one here, it says lead teams of 4. 3 computing students walked in last year and wanted me to review their resume, and I sat them down. I looked at the resume, 1, 2, and 3. I said, you guys don't like people? I said, you don't have one thing on here that tells me that you worked on a team, that you'd be comfortable in a team, and you've talked to other people, because you're going to be working in groups. You probably take a lot of classes and you're trying to learn on your own, but the idea is you probably are set up in groups. You're going to be working in groups. You're going to do part of the project. You're probably never going to do the full project unless it's a real small company. So the idea is make sure on your resume you say something about communication, teamwork, those kinds of things. Again, 3 people gave me the resume. They were all masters. Looked at the resume and I said, okay, where is it? What did you do? It's not the only thing. So the deep dive. So what I'm starting to say is if you start looking at a resume and you write your resume, I'm looking for your technical skills, communication skills. Did you design something? Did you develop something? And one thing I hardly ever see on computing is your process. If you consider yourself organized, how do you write that on your resume? Organize a club? Yeah, that's one way. But when you're working in computing areas, I would expect you to be able to tell me what a waterfall model is, tell me what process you followed for computing. Just try to start any computing project in the middle. It's not going to happen. You can't do it. You really have a beginning and an end. So make sure you're telling me what process you followed when you did the project. So in one of these project examples, worked on a team, you know, technical level to whatever language system that you're working on, and follow a specific process. So you can start almost saying, I can do 4 things. So you're telling me 4 things about you on a piece of paper in front of that employer. And so when I ask you, how do you match? It should be glaring at me saying, oh, this is great. You understand teamwork, you understand the technology, you understand design development, and you understand process. And I think those are like the 4 things I would tell you to make sure it's on your resume every time. I don't have to say team, worked on a team at work, worked on a team here, 1, 2, 3. I mean, just pick your best spots where you want to explain that so they feel that you can do that in particular. So I'm dwelling on it because I see that missing on a lot of resumes. Other experience. So once you start getting into your business, if you've been on a co-op before, if you've had some experience in the past, that's always good stuff. If you've worked in the field before getting here and you have some really good experiences, but those 4 things are still important to me even at the job level, I like to hear it at the job level, not necessarily at the academic level. But if you are trying to enhance your skills and get better at certain things, you can say, this is my base. This is my base from the work experience, but I'm trying to enhance it. And oh, by the way, this class has let me do more than that job let me do. So the job is limiting. You're trying to move ahead. What in your classes are letting you get ahead? And what is that particular technology and depth of understanding that you want to make sure that employer says? So in the work experience, if you've done it there, I like to see that you got paid for this. In the education I also like to see that you've done this from a theory, from practical, from however you're doing it. It starts to show your resume has some strength. And for master's students, I would expect it to be a lot stronger than, say, an undergrad because of those experiences. So make sure that you're really trying to show. You want the employer reading this resume to say, wow. Well, I don't really know what you did. You didn't really tell me enough. If they're asking more questions on your resume, it's a lousy resume. If you exchange resumes between you and say, hey, what do you think? I challenge each one of you to say, okay, would you pay the person next to you $50 an hour based on their resume? And if you say yes, because it's a really good resume, great. But I guarantee every one of you can say, well, what do you know about this particular area? I don't want a lab partner that has no idea what I'm talking about. It makes a lot more work on you. They may not be able to succeed, and you're trying to pass this class. So when you think about this resume, think about what you would do if you were hiring the person next to you and just based on their resume. Would it be something that you want to talk to, ask more questions about? What I'd like to see is from your projects, that's a really good project. Looks like you've done a lot. Tell me about it. Now, that project looks interesting, but I have a lot of questions about that project. So remember that. So leadership, those are all important things. Any questions on the resume? It's kind of the key to the office. It's the key for you to begin your interview. They're going to look at this and tell me. So if you did a good job on your resume, it's the outline for your interview. If you did a good job on your resume, it's probably the first things that they're going to talk about, probably a project at the career fair. If you've done a good job researching and understand yourself, that outline is just handy for you to refer to. So it's something that comes back and back, and you can use regularly to make sure that you understand what they're looking for and how you match that skill. So I keep coming back to that. The cover letter is an introduction. You don't need one for the career fair. If you're sending it out to a company that doesn't work with us, and you want to introduce yourself, that's a good way to have a cover letter. You should, or a covering statement in an electronic email. So it depends on what you're trying to do and how you do it. Typically, if it's co-op here through our system, just put in a resume. They may require a cover letter only for your writing skills and writing sample. But it's almost never used. There's a handful that does use it for if it's a documentation type project and you can't document, then they're probably going to want you to write about it. So, so you do an introduction. I'm interested in this position. I found it at the career fair. I heard about it here. Or I did it somewhere else. Then you tell me about it. The third paragraph is basically what I just finished saying about the resume. Is why should I hire you? You're trying to answer that question for the employer, because they match what you're looking for. I have extensive experience in that area, or I've had 3-4 classes in that particular area. Tell them why you should be there. Tell them why you want to have the interview, because the next one says, basically, be action-oriented. Refer the resume, don't rewrite the resume, and then tell them, I'm interested in this position, and I can meet you next week, online, in person, just depends on how you want to handle it, and where they are. There's a lot of ways to get in front of somebody, and it's not just driving to their location. It helps, but I'm sure most of you have done video conferencing at this point in time, so it's available and convenient, so think about it. Reasons for the cover letter. Back to my main point about what do you know about that company? You're trying to match. And if you know, it's unacceptable nowadays to not know anything about a company. So we have 250 companies plus coming to this career fair. Good luck walking in the door and saying, okay, I'm here for the career fair. So if every one of you are in one line, who knows about the company when you walk up? And so the cover letter is kind of making that match. The resume is kind of making that match. The interview has to make the match. But if you don't know anything about the company, shame on you, basically, because there's just so much information out there. I don't mean I'm going to test you on the company. I don't mean we have to write a paper on the company, but you should know specifics about what do you want to do for that company. So when they start asking, well, what do you want to do for us? What do you know about us? One example I like to use is we had a student interview, happened to be an engineer, so not you guys, but the company was GE Aerospace. So student walks in, gets the interview, came to the question about, what do you know about us? He said, well, you make good appliances, good washers and dryers, things like that. And the guy just almost bit his tongue, walked out, laughed hard, walked back in and said, we're done. I mean, he was just, I can't believe. Well, you can call, a jet engine an appliance, but I don't think that was what he was looking for. So the thing is that know something about the company. Don't be so, because he almost always ask. And it's probably a pet peeve of most employers at an interview is, what do you know about us? And if you say nothing, you shouldn't even waste your time interviewing. You shouldn't even waste their time being there. And there's no way you know how to match it, because now you don't even know what they do. I mean, most of the time you can find enough, but always go to the point to, here's my resume. How do I match this job online? Here's the company that I'm really applying to. Because you can go in so many different directions with computing. I mean, just everybody's using it. Low embedded systems to mobile, all those pieces, and everything in between. So the idea is, how are you making these connections? And it's up to you. The employers will wait and go ahead, tell me about you. So if I said at an interview right now, tell me about yourself, you could have a half an hour, and then I'm going to call the next person. Would you feel comfortable doing that? So I'm skipping into a lot of pieces. So I'm kind of talking about the 60-second commercial, because you got a minute to talk about that. So you're not a full half hour, you got a minute. So if you spend a minute, well, I'm in a master's program. Okay, time's up. Think about what you really want to say, because you spent time understanding what the company does, and what's the first thing you want to tell them about. If you know what they're doing, and you can talk about their technology directly related to what you're studying and what you're doing or what you want to do, bingo. In your communications to tell them that is telling me two things: that you know the technology and you have good communication skills. Could work well on a team. So really think about how you're presenting, and you got 1 minute. You're in line. I mean, again, you have the phone, you can look it up if you don't have time to do it all. I'd also suggest that before you go do this 60-second commercial for a company, that you spend time looking at all the companies that might be interesting. Because they're all doing something different, and you want to see which one fits you best. Again, do it quick, practice a little bit, but think about what you put on the resume is the same thing you're really trying to tell them. So you can say good morning, go through a quick detail, and this is probably a quick way to say it. it's not complicated, but if you don't prepare, then could be embarrassing. So this is a pretty simplified JavaScript HTML. You got to talk more in depth of things that you might want to do. So are you doing the web, wherever you are? Job search. I don't know how many people. So there's a lot of people in here that didn't get on Job Zone. I said that's like the easy way to find jobs is being on Job Zone. You all should have accounts, so you should log in through Shibboleth, through RIT, and you should have an access point to our Job Zone. You'll have to fill out a few questions before you can use it, before you can see the jobs. But once you do that, you're in. It's low-hanging fruit. You go. There's like 20 jobs for my major. This one looks interesting, and apply. Send a resume. They go shopping. They look at the resumes. You get a call, and you go from there. But if you're not on it, it's pretty much a no for all those people. So again, be on Job Zone for a start. Now, I'm not saying we're everything, but we have some good information, and we call companies on your behalf all the time. So we're trying to get Hewlett-Packard's another big company, just an FYI. So we're getting in contact. They're going to be at the career fair, but we're doing one branch. They have 2,000 full-time jobs. They have hundreds of internships, and we don't post them all. Yeah, we're working on it. But the idea is put your resumes out there into the pool. So if you go to the career fair and you have a good resume, get it into the website for that employer. Don't wait and hand it to them at the career fair. Bring it. Hand it to them if they want it. But make sure you go and spend the time with that company online when you're researching it. There'll be a careers link, probably under About the company, or just search it in Google. You'll probably find it faster. And put your resume in. If you're interested in a company, don't wait for the middleman. Just get right to the source. Get it into their pool, because they'll tell you at the career fair, make sure your resume's in our web or in our on site. Go on apply. So take care of business before that. Don't wait. A couple of quick places. Job Central is through Job Zone. We actually have a link within that. So in Indeed, I don't know how many people have been on Indeed.com. Okay, you can set up a search agent on Indeed.com and have them send you all sorts of stuff daily, weekly, however you want. And I use that for developers' jobs, locally, internationally. I mean, there's a lot of places that you can actually get information from them, and they'll email you. So if you have a particular area, or if you have 2 or 3 different areas, get online, have them email it to you, so you see these jobs coming at you. Because JobZone does the same thing, but we have a tighter market. We're trying to make sure that we talk to these companies. Obviously, we can't talk to everybody. We try our best. And you see that, okay, we can only do parts and pieces. If you have a particular company that you're interested, you should be on their site anyway. But Indeed searches, crawls the webs, pulls that out, and seems to be one of the better ones out there that we use all the time. So if I needed to find artificial intelligence, I can look up that and it comes up. Networking, LinkedIn. How many have a LinkedIn account? Okay, I see a lot more hands this time. There's jobs on there. Are you following groups that are really specific to your field? You could make comments in there and they can start seeing that you really know your topic. You're going to be noticed that way. So there's not just, here I'm listening, applying for the job, and you might have a year or 2 left. And you might want to know a lot more about this field, and you want to know who's doing what in the field. Do your research, find the people that can make a difference in what you want to do, who are researching things that you really are studying. Make a connection. I mean, the hardest thing to do is like, I'm a student at RIT, interested in this field, I'm studying this, could we be connected? But don't just say the standard line, whatever it is. Don't ever use just, I'm interested in you being connected LinkedIn. I don't know you. So I'm not going to say, oh, sure, come on in. Because it's usually somebody you know, somebody you recommend. But if they give you a nice introduction and you now know why they're trying to do it, and they're in a group, you can start seeing their contacts. So it's a huge networking tool that you all should use. International, US, anybody. So the fall fair is coming up. have some resumes, because you will be asked for those. Dress appropriately. If you're going through classes and you say, well, I didn't have time to get changed, come on in anyway. But I'm just telling you now, one of the comments that employers say about us is, RIT, is that students come prepared. They're serious about getting a job. They understand what it takes, and they come in prepared. So we appreciate that, and we are just saying that it come appropriate. Most people are dressed in suits or appropriate wear for an interview. Make sure you know the company before you get there. We have a lot of courses. We actually have Monday before the career fair, we're going to have Toyota, GE, and a few other companies describing in a panel what they expect at a career fair, what they want to know from you, and it's really good. It's all online. So if you go to our website, hit career fair, it'll give you an outline of everything that we're doing, but it's going to be from the employer's mouth what they expect at a 60-second commercial. So hopefully what I'm telling you matches what they tell you, but pretty much it is. We have a mock interview, so you're really uncomfortable and you've never really interviewed much. That's a Friday before the career fair, it's 26th, I believe. So we want you to come in and take advantage of that. That will be another way for you to practice. It'll be employers. We invite them on campus. They'll ask you the questions that they would normally ask, and they would give you some good feedback on how you did. We have a lot of resume reviews, so if you, that same Friday, we're gonna have somebody in Golisano here doing resume reviews. Come on down, you got 10 minutes, we'll review it for you, and then if you need to work on it, you can. I'm not gonna go through all this, but you need good work, professional network. As you go out on co-op, these become your professional references. Obviously, you wanna do a good job for them. I'm going to skip this, but I think this signature and online, there's ways to how to do the process. LinkedIn, a lot of people are on it, so here's good reasons why. It sounds like you guys already know. Networking still is the best way to find a job. If you know somebody that knows the company. I mean, I've hired a student sight unseen because the person that was working for me was excellent, referred me to this person, said, this person is excellent. And I said, so I called him up and I said, do you want a job? And he goes, well, yeah, it'd be great. And he goes, well, when do I have to interview? I said, no, that job's yours. He was flabbergasted, but he also is now coming to recruit on campus. So it's like, well, must have made an impression, but the idea was he was really good. Somebody said that he was really good. I'd have to really question and I have to go through the whole process. So networking is actually a really good thing across the board. I mean, so pay attention to that. Again, there's a lot of ways to network, as you see here. If you can't find a job, you should be talking to a coordinator. Each one of you are assigned somebody, so I have IST. We have somebody with HCI and the other programs. So just come in and see us, and we'll give you more information on this. Interviewing, I told you enough for now. The basics. Back to matching your skills to the employer's needs. That's really the key to this whole thing. I mean, if you just remember that and know what they do and how you work to them, you're probably going to be way ahead of the game. There's different styles of interviewing. Some are appropriate, some are not. It says don't say things negative. I mean, this is your opportunity to say how great you are and what you can do for that company. And if you say, well, I just had a bad day, or, my team really didn't do that well, you're really not helping putting advantage. If you're going to say your team, let's say you did all the work on that team, I probably wouldn't say it that way. I said, well, my team experience might not have been. So let's say, well, it was a bad day. The team didn't work out. But what did you learn from it? I learned how to work with the group a little bit better. So I might have another way to restate it that's in a more positive way. So again, you're trying to put your best foot forward and tell them the best things that you can do because it's kind of like your best day at that interview. So again, try to keep things positive. You're focused on you. You're focused on what they can do, what you can do for the company. So stay focused. Keep your comments based on that. Don't talk about your holidays and what happened last month. For vacation. It's like, be targeted. I mean, that's what you're trying to do in school. It's what you're trying to do for the employer. Stay on target. And salaries, usually their first conversation. Definitely don't ask at the career fair. They might have things stated, but you definitely do it. If it's for full-time, you typically probably would go through a second interview before you start talking about it. But you also go online, look. I mean, there's salary.com that will tell you salaries in different regions. It'll give you a ballpark. We have stuff online that you can give you a ballpark. So you should walk in there with some idea what you're going to be asking for from full-time and from co-op. But you usually don't ask the first day you're talking to these guys. You're trying to convince them that you're the person for the job. Once they know that, then you have time to discuss salary. And if it's low, it's 2 seconds to ask a question. What are the salary requirements, or what should I expect? You could say our IT's average salary for IT is something in the 20s. They may say, well, we're only offering 15. It's your decision to say that's acceptable or that's unacceptable. But back to my beginning about the reneging, I've seen students say, well, this company's offering 20, but I already accepted this one for 15. Not a good enough reason to move on, and you got a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to have a problem, and your department will just say, because we get called by the company saying they left. They disappeared, we don't know where they are, and they signed a letter of commitment, they verbally accepted the position. So negotiate the salary up front with the employer and ask the question. Because one question, 1 second, may get you $5 an hour more. But if you don't even ask, they're going to say, oh, good. They're going to come for, $10 an hour. Make sure you ask the question up front. And they may say, this is the salary. Take it or leave it. That's your time to say, is this acceptable or not? So some of the things that I said, the 4 things that we, expect from this group would be your technical skills, communication skills, something about your design development capabilities, and your process, your organization skills. That's usually what I see across the board from this group. There's other things that you do. There's other things that you could, but if I said, what are your 4 strengths or 5 strengths, you should be able to give me something. I'm just saying these are 4 that I usually see, but you really need to come up with that answer for yourself. They may even ask, what are your 5 strengths? Just give me a list. Just a real quick thing on interviewing. It's not just, so you're in front of this person, they're interviewing you, they're asking you these questions, and you're trying to come up with the answers. And do you understand that they're not interviewing for themselves? They have this group of people that told them, go to RIT and go find me people. So they go there and say, okay, I have an idea who these people are. I know what they want because that's my job. And I ask questions to make them happy. Because if they're happy with who they hire, they're happy with the person that's recruiting, that person gets hired. So it's not necessarily the person you're talking to. It's this group. So that's why I keep saying you're not necessarily talking to the person that's going to be working with you. It's the person that's there in front of you, asking you those questions. So you're trying to make sure that your communications are coming across, personality's coming across, because if your personality is not going to match that group, that's a no. So it is personality that comes across, and that's something that they look at. And don't fret if it's like, well, we don't match personalities, because you may not like to work for those people. I mean, if you think it's not a good match for you, it's your interview too. It's not just a one-way, I need a job, and it's like, well, actually, this would be a really good experience, or, yeah, I don't think I'd fit in really well. So it's something that you still have to decide on what these things are. So you're being interviewed, but it's not a one-way street. So we talked about a lot of this stuff. But one thing that students do, and plus at the career fair, ask for a business card. How do you write a letter? How do you follow up with all this? So they gave you the time for the interview, and they are giving you good information, and you said, this would be great. And then you walk away and you go like, I can't remember the name of the person I just interviewed with. Because you're so geared up on what you're trying to tell them, you forget their name. I mean, guaranteed, it happens all the time. And at career fair, you see 25 companies. I mean, unless you have a really good, memory for names, and I don't. So if I don't get a card, it's like, I don't remember. So the idea is ask for a card and say, I'm really interested, and I'll follow up. Think about a project that you've been a project team, you got team members, and you say, this stuff is due next week, and you're not going to wait around for me to decide to give it to you or not. If you're a team member, you're going to be calling me and saying, hey, I really want to know what's going on. They said, did you do your part of the project or not? So if you think of it it's just like the employer. Are you going to follow up with the employer and try to say, are you interested? Some people just do the application and let it go and hope. I put out 50 resumes. Yeah, are you expecting them to get back to you? Some do, some don't. But it's up to you to follow up. It's like a team member, you're not going to wait for them to decide to give you the paper or hand in their project or give the piece of the project to you. You're going to be calling them. You're going to be following up on this. You're going to say, I need it tomorrow. What have you been doing? So if you think of it that way, you're following up, you're just taking care of business. You follow up with the company, you make sure that they understand what you do, what you can do, and how you can do it. And you repeat yourself. You do a follow-up letter, email. Just wanted to make sure you know about these things. So again, make sure you get a business card. We collect all the names at the career fair, but you can come in and get it. The problem is you may have spoken to one particular person that you want to remember, and they may not have given us the card. So now both of us don't know who it is. So help yourself. Make sure you ask for a business card or get their name and put it in a piece of paper and write it down and get their email, because you can't follow up if you don't know that stuff. So like it says, a thank you note in 24, 48 hours for an interview. Following up for the career fair is still an important thing. They may say, no, we're filled up for interviews for the following day, but we're coming back next week, or we will take your name, and if they're taking your name, get the information saying I'm going to follow up in a week, 2 weeks with an update, because they're seeing a lot of students at one time. How do you make sure that they remember you? I'm not getting into this, but back to the idea of you wrote a resume, you understand how you match your background to their needs. Behavioral question is something like, tell me a time when a situation didn't work out and how you handled it. So that's behavior. How did you behave in a real setting, in a real example? That's kind of what this is in a nutshell. But the idea is to define the event that might match some of the events that you may get on the job. So they're just saying, well, how'd you act? How'd you handle it? That would be my expectation of you on that job. So that's something that they will be looking at. You shouldn't be getting these at the career fair, because this is more of an interview one-on-one. We have handouts, and this is online, so this is a method of trying to remember how to handle this. So situation, the tasks, the action, and then the result of that action. How many have been on a technical interview? Anybody? Handful? Did they ask you a lot of, what type of questions were you asking? Anybody throwing out?
A problem. They would probably give you a problem and ask you to approach it.
So that happens a lot. They might just put up a problem to say, okay, how would you walk through it? I've had students worry about the language that they're asking it in. Do I have to solve it this way? I want to know the issue. What I find in here from employers, they said, we want you to ask questions. If the problem is something that I only give you pieces of it, and you don't ask a question on figuring out more detail of that problem, you're never going to solve it. I know the answer, I know the solution, and I'm asking you that question. And you don't ask me some basic pieces to fill out the question or fill out the problem, complete the problem. Shame on you. You know this is missing, and you know you didn't get enough, then ask the question. They're testing you. They want to know, are you willing to speak up and ask questions? So they're not just testing you on a problem, they're also saying, well, how do you handle these things? So the technical interview becomes a way for them to see what you know. So a lot of them, like Google and Microsoft, are always saying data structures, what do you know about it? If you're a developer, they want to make sure you know the toolkit. So in any field, just a quick one, any computing field, you're basically building a toolkit. You're building a toolkit. Here's what I know. Here's what I've done. And oh, by the way, I solve a lot of problems with that toolkit. And here are my projects that I've done it. So you're explaining to them, I've used this toolkit on these projects. You get to a problem that they're asking you, you still have that toolkit. And they're saying, how well do you know your field? And how well do you know that toolkit? And can you apply it to this problem? They don't necessarily mean that it's language specific or like a technical area specific, but if you have a way to solve it, you can come across knowing something. But ask questions in the middle of it, it's okay. If they didn't give you enough, they may be doing it on purpose. And I've heard them over and over again over the years saying, yeah, we do it on purpose just to see if they'll ask. Because if they don't ask, we know they're not going to answer it, because they can't. There's a lot of information on, if you Google it for specific fields. I did it even for finance, and there's specific technical interviews for them too. So it was like, well, so if you're in a specific area that you're trying to do, there's a lot of information online. If you accept the job, this is where you report it. This is our main page. You can see where report your job. You go in there and you tell us where you are. So some quick nuts and bolts. Your department will add you to the system. You can't really register for co-op. They will register you for it. So your department's looking for the notification that you would have filled out on our page and the offer letter that you would have gotten from the company, and then we'll put you in. We send the employer and you, we send you the work report, we send the employer the evaluation, so how well you did, what you did, and we ask you to fill it out, say what you did, how well you thought you did, and then your departments look at that and give you a grade. So usually when we get both of those, you get an S. If you don't get those in, it's an F. And they're usually pretty quick about getting those grades out. I'm skipping a lot of things because there are a lot more details, but I don't really want to get into every piece of this. I think the resume is kind of the key thing that I wanted to cover today. Some of the other pieces is ethics. Do you fall asleep in class? I mean, do you, you think people wouldn't really do this? But I have a few examples. The guy working for Toyota fell asleep. He was out. So I think he was a gamer. He was up all night. He was asleep on the desk at the job, on the job. His boss walks in and he started laughing. He goes, he went and got his boss, and then he brought the head guy in. So all three of them are standing there looking at this guy. Hey, wake up. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. He said, just gather your things. Apparently what you're doing is boring and not challenging enough, so you can leave right now. And that's not a good way to wake up. But it's not, you're on a real job. You're doing real work for this company. And hello, another example for asking questions. Not-working student takes down the network at this company, goes out and gets some hacking software that he was trying to get down to bring it in, puts the network back up. So all the alarms go off saying, somebody's into our system, and 5 minutes later, they come running into his office. And he looks at him, they look at him like, what were you thinking? He goes, well, I wanted to test the software to make sure that it wouldn't, you know, we could prevent it from doing anything to the network. They said, you can gather your things and you can leave. Because you basically put our company at harm. You know, it was wide open. Anybody could have gotten in at that moment in time. So kind of the moral of that story is they liked him, actually. They wanted to hire him for full time. He was like a week away from his final co-op week, and they were going to offer him full time. So the company was extremely upset, but they had no choice but to fire him. So the moral of that story is he should have asked the supervisor, do we have a server offline? Can we, you know, can I do it offsite so I won't affect the corporate network? And he probably would have said absolutely. But because he did it without asking, did it to the company, he was fired. So they don't really have a lot of tolerance. Usually they have like a computing code of conduct, like RIT does, and read it, expect it, accept it, and pay attention to it. The rest of it, you get the idea. So it's important. Logical reasons. Accepting offers, accept it. We do have a lot of information, so I'm not going to go into all this, but if you have accounts online, people do look. If you Google your name, you can see what people know about you. That's a good way to know. You can even make a Google alert to email yourself to say, hey, you know, anything new on me today? And some people have done that, and it's just an easy way to keep track of what's your presence online, because employers will do the Google thing. Social media connections, back to looking for jobs, Twitter has jobs, I mean, all these have jobs. So there's a lot of places to look. And the companies that post these have jobs. So Facebook is coming on campus day after the career fair. So you can see that we do have the activity. I'm going to ask each one of you, once you get your resume, is to put it up online. So then I can say, all of you been on Job Zone, because that's how we keep track. If there's some accepting points that you might go on and say, I want to know, I don't want email from the department, like our office. You can check a box, say, and so we won't email you anything. You can say, I don't want to be on any like resume books, because what we do is we'll grab a resume book. If you've said, go ahead, we're the middleman. All we're trying to do is get your name in front of that employer. So we do that all the time. If you choose that you prefer not to have that done, you'll mark that off. You would sign off on the same kind of sheet that you're signing off on in paper. We actually have that same thing online. So if you're using our system, we ask that you pay attention to the same thing you have in front of you, because we don't want you to renege. We want you to pay attention to this stuff, and definitely use it. But I'm going to ask each one of you to put your resume up online. Just an upload, which means you're in the account. Part of what I do is I look at some of them to make sure, for my majors, to see if they have it, first of all, and then spot check to see if they look reasonable. But again, if you want me to take a quick look at it, come to our resume workshops, come to that, or email it to me. So again, and I'm going to let you look up my email, just because you can find it pretty easy. You can call our office to set up an appointment. So again, if you're not really sure what you want to do, where you're going, how to do it, we're available at any time. We like talking to students, but we can't do it for you. I mean, you're busy. Set up an appointment, come on in, chat, bring a resume, let's talk. But we don't really call up and say, hey, can you come on in tomorrow? I'll put this PowerPoint online so you can review it if you prefer, because I did scan over things really quickly, because we didn't really have a lot of time, and I do want to have a few minutes for questions. No questions?
Is there anything to be done after the co-op?
What's that?
Is there anything to be done after the co-op?
So you finish the co-op and you got grades?
No,
Neat.
they're not graded.
Yeah, I did mention it, but, so you go on co-op, so you do all this work and you get on job and you're working. We sent out an evaluation about 7th week of the summer. We sent out, the evaluation about the 10th, 11th week of a semester to the employer. And we send a work report to students. So we ask that you do both. And then when we get those articles, once we get those pieces of paper, electronic form, that's how you get grades. So once that's done, you go on to your classes.
Is there a deadline for the evaluations?
Yeah, before the end of the next or beginning of the next semester. So if you finish, so there's no hard date. We want to know your beginning date and your end date. So let's say you start in September for a fall co-op, but you don't finish until January because you might work through intersession. So we see those dates. We would then expect you to have it in before this, like say February 1st, before the next semester. So that's a hard date because that's when you get the F. If you don't have those in. Okay? You good?
No, I was kind of late in submitting my evaluation.
What's that?
I was kind of late in submitting my part of evaluation for the summer club I did.
Okay. If the employer's late, we try to call the company up because we send it to them constantly, and if they don't fill it out, it's really up to you to make sure that they do that. Your department will be looking at it and saying, well, you didn't fill out the pieces. And sometimes it just goes on and on for a long time and people forget about it. And they can do grade changes, but the preference is to get it done on time.
Can I speak to that real quick? Co-op is not required for grad students, so we wouldn't necessarily catch that your evaluation hasn't come through. What we're finding, and part of the reason you're all here today, is when you apply for graduation, and we go through and do a preliminary audit on SIS, we look for I's and we look for F's. We can certify you with an F because you're a graduate student. So if the co-op was relatively recent, I'll send you an email and say, hey, you're done with everything, we're getting ready to certify you, but you have an F in co-op, and then you have to follow up and either do your own evaluation or contact your employer. What happens is you all finish your coursework, you go out on co-op, and then we send you a letter in a few years saying you're almost done with your 7 years to complete your degree. And suddenly you realize that 5 years ago, you did a co-op and didn't submit the evaluation, and you have an F that you really don't want to say on your transcript. But if it doesn't get caught before we certify you as having completed your master's degree, it's permanent. So you need to make sure that you've got all that paperwork completed, the online evaluation. Okay? Because there's one of me and 290 of you. So I try, but every once in a while somebody slips through the cracks. Okay? So make sure you do those evaluations at the end of your co-op and that your employer does it as well. You guys have any other questions for Jim about the co-op? Yes.
I've just been talking to my employers, and they did not get the email from RIT. And what the website says is, it says if the employers don't get the email, there's this lady Mary Lou.
Yeah.
And they can contact her. And
Well, what happens a lot is you might be hired by HR and you put that name down. So we send it out regularly to that HR person. They're going, I don't do this. And we never get your evaluation. So it's up to you to make sure that it's going to the right person. So if your supervisor, direct supervisor, wasn't the person that you put on the list when you told us where you were, we're sending it to the wrong person. So Mary Lou should get the new name and make sure that we can follow up, and we'll change it and send it to Mary Lou, or send it to the company.